Well, it's council preview time again, and the Common Council meeting is coming up on September 8th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. right here in the Common Council chambers. Again, I'm Tom Laux, Communications Director for the City of Marshfield, and usually I have our City Administrator, Steve Barg, but he is on vacation this week. So I am going to go over this by myself. It's going to be a very short meeting, it looks like, according to the agenda, but I'd like to inform you guys of what's going on. So let's talk about Mayor's comments on here, and he will be doing an employee recognition. Samuel Fox works for the police department for now 15 years. He started on September. After our employee recognitions, the council will have time to comment. And then we'll go right into our consent agenda, and there's a few things on there for consent, usually minutes and reports, and one of those of note would be happen in our Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee that happened on Tuesday, September 1st. Our Human Resources Director will be presenting approval, including dental benefit alignment and proposed for the 2021 budget. And we'll hear from her in this short message.
So our goal for the past several years has been to continue to align our benefits for all of our non-represented employees across the city. And so with that, over the past several years, we've been making progress towards that. In 2019, we aligned our life insurance benefit. In 2020, we aligned our long-term disability benefit. And this year, we're bringing back dental as a potential alignment. You may remember this coming back from the past, where we have all of our employees currently pay 15% of the full premium, and the city picks up 85% of the premium, with the exception of our wastewater employees, our street division, our custodial, our park maintenance, and our ordinance enforcement officers, who pay 100% of the dental premium. So in your packet, I did put the summary of our plan costs. This year, we did get a renewal from Delta Dental with no increase, so we are expecting the plan design to remain the same, as well as the cost of the plan. If you do think back to the past several years, when we were in 2019, we really started a process to align this dental benefit. So in 2019, what we did is we had changed the plan design, lowering the maximum, the annual maximum that we pay from $3,000 to $2,000 to start to bring down the overall cost of the plan. In 2019 and 2020, we wanted to ensure that we had a good estimate of terms of how many people were actually enrolled from these 5 departments that pay 100%. And as you can see under step 2 in your packet, we are pretty stable. We have 15 of the 45 individuals enrolled in 2019 and 16 in 2020. So our goal would be to align the dental plan contributions for everyone to the 15, 70, or 85 split, so that all staff would pay 15% of the premium. Now, if we looked at this, I tried to do some projections for you just to know what the cost impact could be. So if you look at kind of best case scenario with the 16 employees that are currently enrolled in either a single or a family plan, if we were to implement them at the 85-15 split, the overall cost annually would be just over $16,000. Another potential projection is I looked at all of the 45 individuals to see what they had enrolled in for health insurance, either single family or none. Many times you'll see that if someone enrolls in the health plan, they mirror that enrollment in the dental plan. So if we were to take the 45 employees and look to see if they had enrolled as either single family or none, the cost to implement that for the dental plan would be about $45,000 a year. And then I also wanted to throw in worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, if everyone who was in that 45 person group enrolled in a family plan, the more expensive plan, the cost overall would be $65,000. So I did kind of provide a summary that talked about the potential costs, so you can kind of see where those projections lie out based on departments, just so that you have a full scope. What we're asking for this year is to look at the current budget. If the budget can support the alignment, what we would like to do is align all non-represented employees at the 85-15 split with the dental benefit effective January 1st of 2021. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Mr. Handler. question I have for you, Jim, is are these for all non-represented employees?
Yes.
What about the
Can you turn on your microphone, Mr. Handler? It's not can you, would you?
Thank you very much for the reminder. Appreciate that. Anyway, the question is, what about the represented employees? Are they covered by this plan too?
So the police and fire represented employees are covered by the same dental plan. They do pay 100%, but in order for them to get a split, they would need to negotiate that as part of their contract.
Okay, so now we're just talking strictly of the non-represented.
Strictly non-represented.
Are we talking about, what about the elected officials?
Elected officials aren't currently eligible for the dental plan. That changed, I want to say, in 2015 or 16.
Okay, thank you.
And my understanding is now these employees, they pay 100% of their own plan, the ones who are enrolled, right?
They pay 100%.
Right. Okay. So just out of question, Steve isn't here tonight, so do you know what the date the department heads have to have their budgets back into Steve, the budget request? They've already turned them in. Do we have any? We haven't seen anything on them yet here.
I think Ron's got in.
Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, they've all been submitted. So what we do is we put out a budget manual. They, only submit increases up to this. They follow that, and then they submit them to Steve with any additional requests. So that's kind of where we're at now. We call it tech review. So we are reviewing those. All along, we said general fund would be about a 2.5% increase. It's looking like we'll do better than that, though, for 2021 budget.
Better meaning less or better meaning more than 2.5%?
Better, less than 2.5%.
Okay.
There is one other point that I should probably make too. So of the employees that we're talking about, 8 of them are wastewater employees, and those wastewater employees they're funded through the enterprise fund versus the general fund. So there is a bit of a savings there for the wastewater.
So, but that's already been included in your estimate, is that correct?
No, that does include everyone as is. So right now, currently 5 of the wastewater employees are enrolled and they pay 100% of the premium. So it would go up for those 5 employees if they were to enroll with the 85-15 split.
But it would be paid out of the wastewater.
Yes, that would be paid out of the enterprise
Not
fund.
out of the general fund that's included in the 2.5% that Ron was just.
Correct.
Okay, that's almost immaterial though. The amount, the 15% of what the 5 of them are, I think would be.
85% is what the city
Or
would pay.
85%. I'm sorry. Yeah, 85% would be. What was it? 100. There's a family plan. Is what? How much a month? I was looking at
It is on there. 45, 47, 46.17 for a single plan, 141.85 for a family.
141.85, and that would be our cost for each one of them would be 120 times 5 at worst. So that is pretty much immaterial. That's $600.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? You've heard the recommendation. What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Mr. Handler moved to approve. Second by Mr. Wetzel. Any further discussion? If not,
I have just one.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
How many other things do we still have to get everybody into alignment? How many other areas of?
One more.
One more?
Yeah, so this would be, if we align this one, the only thing that we'll have outstanding is our PEP plan.
Okay.
And that's a minor plan.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda that's pulled out of the consent by our city administrator would be a candidate's presentation for Marshfield Utilities Commission. No action will be decided until the September 22nd meeting. And then what happened again at our finance and budget and personnel meeting presented by our finance director, Ron Allman. He talks about the discussion of bond ratings and what our next steps are. We get ratings from Moody's, and that helps us get a better interest rate when we're looking out for borrowing money. Let's listen in to Ron's presentation at the Finance, Budget, and Personnel meeting on last Tuesday.
So you have the credit opinion, and then my handouts show kind of what the Moody's scale is, as long as some of our historical levy information. So the process is we send them quite a bit of information, our audit report. Ehlers prepares a preliminary official statement for the debt issue. They sign us an analyst, and then we have a ratings call where they kind of pick through all their criteria and ask a lot of questions. So where we were about 2 years ago was AA3. We were fully downgraded on discovery of the TID issue to A1. And what this opinion does is keeps us at A1, but gives us a negative outlook. And I'll kind of go through the reasons for that. I'm going to kind of follow along on the credit opinion. The main reason for the negative outlook is stated as a structural deficit in the debt service fund, which we're well aware of it. And we know that we suppressed our tax levy rate for quite a while using TID transfers. And for a long time, we really haven't funded our actual debt. And from our discussion with Moody's, and this is the opinion of kind of Ehlers and I, that they didn't downgrade us because they're kind of taking a wait and see a look. So now that we're aware of what the issue is, you know, their phrase was, what is the political will to fix this sooner than later? Keeping in mind that we'll be back at the market in March because we're borrowing late this year. We'll do our annual borrowing a lot earlier this year. So we've got about 6 or 7 months to take some substantial action on it, or, you know, I'm fairly confident they would downgrade us again if we don't. So if you look at the credit strengths, you'll note that in all of this, it's kind of changed from, it was a TID issue, where a TID issue is actually now considered a strength. So we finally convinced them that our TIDs are doing really well, they're paying back. So that's actually listed as a strength. So it's kind of changed from a TID general fund issue to a debt issue. Under credit challenges, obviously continued narrowing of the city's liquidity just means we're deficit spending. You know, our cash in the general fund's going down, and it's going to continue to go down until we take action. Elevated debt burden, you know, is noted a bullet point. That's not, I don't want to say it's not a big deal, but it's not a big number. But I think we talked about how more of our debt issue now is general fund only, whereas in the past, you know, there was a mix of TID, enterprise. So it's more of a concentration of general fund debt causing that comment. And then the factors that lead to an upgrade, lead to a downgrade, I think are just stating the obvious. We have more cash, it's good. We have less cash, it's bad. So I didn't see a lot in there. If you turn to the third page of the credit opinion, there's a section titled Financial Operations and Reserves, General Fund Support Required for Other Funds. So this is where, especially in the second paragraph, they really talk about the crux of the issue and why they're taking kind of a wait and see approach. So in fiscal 2019, the debt service fund had a deficit fund balance of $1 million. You know, we covered that during the audit. We'll have a budget resolution because ultimately it's the general fund's responsibility. So we'll have a a budget resolution to move that deficit and have the general fund pick it up. All right, and the second one I want to highlight there, since the outstanding debt is GO debt, the city is able to levy an amount sufficient to cover all the debt service. So if I digress a little bit into how levy limits work, we can levy for, in the general fund, just this tiny increase based on a whole bunch of factors such as net new growth, those kind of things. So expenditure restraint payments and the levy limits are really focused on the general fund. So we can levy for the general fund, this little increase, plus all our actual debt payments. So we have a deficit in the debt service fund, but they're all actual debt payments that we can levy for. So that's what they're saying there. And in the conversation on the phone is you have the tool to correct it. And that's where they brought the phrase, what is the political will to fix it? I know it's a bit a big number, but that's what they're saying there. And then they make a comment. Okay, so then they have a comment without an increased levy or other budgetary alterations. I think that sentence ends in, we will downgrade you again. Management does have a 5-year plan they're following, but again, a 5-year plan is only as good as our current actions. If our plan is to continue deficit spending, we update the 5-year plan to reflect that. So that paragraph kind of was really what we spent most of the time on the phone talking about. Let's see here. So if you look at the handout I gave you, it just kind of lays out the credit ratings so you can kind of visualize them. And then on the second page, and you've all seen this before, this is just kind of a history of our levy, kind of highlights where we under levied for years. And then at the end of the 2020 budget, we were about 5.23% below the levy amount needed to balance the general fund and the debt service fund. The second table underneath there, you can see the city did put in an increase last year, a little bit below the average of all the other taxing jurisdictions. And then finally, we kind of show the shortfall in the debt service fund we're projecting this year. The way we do the budget is we do all the expenses first and try to limit them as much as possible. All the information for the revenue side comes in late. We need all the assessed value, the state aids. So what we do is we set all the revenues same as last year, because a lot of that information comes in later. We probably won't see some of it for a month or two. But if we take a look at the debt service fund, what we have in the budget now, our actual debt service payments are $4,395,000, and the amount we levied last year with no increase is $3.2 million. So that's the deficit in the debt service fund that Moody's is talking about. So right now, before we go into budget planning, we have a $1.1 million deficit in the debt service fund. And that's the primary reason for the negative outlook and that they're waiting to see. So that's all I had. So fire away with questions.
Well, there are a whole bunch of takeaways in my mind. One of them is it's terrifying to think we're going to be having to borrow money to pay off borrowed money. We have a $1 million deficit that we're going to have to take care of. What was it in total?
1.1.
1.1 million that we're going to have to borrow, or that we're going to have to pay off somehow or another. And we know there's not any room in the GO, or because of the levy limit. We can't levy for that other than borrowing money, which we can levy for, and paying it off with that. Is that correct?
No.
Okay,
So-
tell me why.
The amount of levy allowed is the general fund expenses plus a
Plus
very,
the debt
very
service.
small increment, plus the actual debt service payments.
Right,
So we can levy for our actual debt service. We haven't been,
right.
correct?
So,
So we wouldn't borrow money. We could levy up to our actual debt and pay our debt.
okay, so, all right, I got it. I see where I'm making the error. I got it.
Yep.
But that means adding $1.1 million to the tax roll this year.
Possibly. So again, the revenue number isn't
You
final.
begin to sound like a lawyer, do possibly, maybe,
Yeah.
You're an accountant,
Yeah.
give me something.
There's all kinds of different factors moving. So, and the reason I say that is because what we could do is we obviously raise revenues, but if we would decrease general fund expenses, then we have some overflow in the general fund that we could use towards debt. So, I mean, it basically comes down to a raise revenue, lower expenses. It can so if we would cut, and I don't know how the general fund is going to come in yet till I see all the revenue, but say we cut expenses enough in the general fund that there's a little surplus there, then we apply that then we can use that for debt service too within the same budget.
Okay, was this the $1.1 million difference between what we owed in debt service and what we levied for debt service was that was just last year's budget, or the budget we're in this year?
So we had a total, in the 2020 budget, we had a total deficit of $707,000. So we split it between general fund and debt service for for some of our reporting. I mean, eventually the general fund pays for it all. So it's about 700,000. So what we're looking at this year, again, is just a planning number. We know the actual debt number because we have to make those payments. But we just set the levy in the debt service to last year as part of step one of the budget. No increase, nothing flowing over from anywhere else, just kind of trying to keep it steady at this point.
Okay, and one of the, okay, is any of that debt service TID? Is that
Nope.
TID money? None of it. That's GO debt?
GO debt, city portion.
Jeez.
Yep, if you pull out the debt review we did, it kind of breaks it down. Wastewater pays their debt, EMS pays their debt, PID pays their debt. The city GO portion, principal and interest for 2021 is the $4.3 million.
Here's something else that you said that strikes me as a strategic error that we're making, or that tells me something about where we are heading as a city. And what you said was that, I think it was in the letter, in the telephone call, in the letter, was that a lot more of the debt is GO rather than TIF or TID, as it used to be. Basically, the use of TIF tells you that the community is growing and expanding and trying to increase its tax base. Growth of the GO means you're just incurring debt and you have a structural deficit somewhere else. So I think that's a big red flag as far as I'm concerned. As far as the overall strategic plan of the city, we should be finding more ways to grow and use TIF more liberally in growing the city than going with GO.
So I think the reduction in PID debt is just a function of where they are in their maturity life cycle. They've all been a while. We borrowed the money up front. Now we're just
But there
collecting.
are no new ones.
Correct. We're proposing a new one for some additional industrial land coming up soon.
To buy that industrial land?
It's TID 12. Josh is kind of working on it right now, but we're looking at it. So as far as but again, it's all separate. I mean, TID's debt separate, wastewater's separate. So the reflection that our recent debt issues are more GO are just a function of the other areas don't have needs at this moment.
Okay, I'm gonna give somebody else a chance. Pete, you got something to add?
Ron, I think we've been handed a difficult situation to try to overcome. Our options are limited without really raising our mill rate or taxes, whatever you want to call it, to the citizens. I feel that our ratings have gone down, and I would imagine that our borrowing is going to reflect the interest charge on our borrowing. So I guess somewhere along the line, we have to, make the big decision, is that to eliminate that 1.1 million. Now, how do we do that? Can we do it by holding down expenses in the city itself and borrowing for the rest? But we can't continue on the pattern that we're doing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree, Peter. I think, we'll have to, in a couple of weeks, we'll have to have that big discussion. Are we looking to, are we interested in any of these alternative revenue sources, which, I heard a clear no. Are we interested in raising the levy to correct an under levy? Are we interested in, reducing the expense side? But yeah, something has gotta give.
That's,
As a follow-up,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
As a follow-up, I realize that you've been handed this particular situation to deal with it. But I would hope that we, resolve this matter quickly and not let it fester year after year. I don't like it. And I'm sure that there are a few other people that don't like it. So if any way I can support your idea that you're going to come up with in a while, I would be happy to listen to those and support them.
Sure, and a couple things. I feel like the last year or two, we've really tried to do everything we can. You know, we restructured debt, we added in some administrative charges. You know, I think we just kind of cleaned up all the periphery issues. So we wanted to do as much as we can before we, you know, kind of got to this point. I think we've eliminated all those other options now. And as far as my idea is really the will of the council. I mean, what Moody's will be looking for is what's the plan and over how many years are you going to clean this up? But it's really the direction of the council. Is it an expense reduction? Is it a rate increase? Is it a combo of both to get us there in 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, whatever it is?
Mr. Whitson,
Thank you.
you blink your eyes, huh?
It really sounds like we're in a tough spot, that Moody's has drawn the line and said, fix it or you're going to suffer. And we're going to suffer pretty quickly if we don't fix it. So I think just trying to boil things down pretty simply here. Now, first of all, when you say alternative revenue sources, it's going to be a hard sell, because as soon as I hear that, first thing I think is more taxes. And I understand that they're not called taxes, they're called fees. Call them what you will. It's still money that's paid by taxpayers, by people who live here, that people who receive services that go to the city that are used to pay things. So that's going to be a tough sell. To get more money, we're looking at two things. We're looking at an increased tax rate, or we're also looking at possible increased value. Do we have any feeling of what increased value may look like, or are we stuck with the only option being potentially increased taxes?
I'm not expecting a large growth increase. I think net new construction was 1.53%. So again, all the revenue side information, you know, is aggregated later in the process, but I'm not expecting a huge growth number.
And are we expecting any additional monies from the state for road repairs or for any of those types of things that are often promised but seldom seen?
You know, we estimate state aids is flat. I did read today that the state came in quite a bit under budget. They reported today or yesterday. But to me, best case is we break even on all our state aids. The transportation aids is a little different because they use this 5-year rolling average. So that one's a little more unpredictable, but I would hope that everything else stays real similar to where it is now.
The big concern that I had, and I think we expressed this early in the year, probably around March, April, May, you know, we're in the midst of this COVID situation. Call it what it is, call it what people call it, whatever. I know it's a kind of a hot topic and a topic of debate, but you can't help but notice that it's affected the economy. And there are businesses that are not doing business the way businesses used to do. And I can't help but think that they're not doing business as well as they used to do. So I think what we made it very clear with earlier in this year was that we really got to hold the line on the mill rate. It's not fair when we're dealing with companies that have been, you know, with employees losing their jobs or being furloughed or whatever else, to say, oh, and here's another gift for you at Christmas time, a bigger tax bill. So with that, we're left with same money, so less spending or more money out of the general fund. And the general fund situation is what's going to kill us with Moody's. So it's going to be a very interesting budget season coming up in a couple months. I don't envy us. Not sure I'm excited about what we have to do, but thanks.
And I think what's kind of bailed us out the last two debt issues, we're just at historically low interest rates. So, you know, we've been downgraded and a negative, and we've got the best interest rates we've ever gotten, you know, at the same time. So we're very fortunate there. You know, a third part of it, you know, is looking at reducing annual borrowing. You know, so we recommended 3.1 million. I think the council added another $600,000 or $700,000 onto that. So that's something we may want to revisit if we're not going to move aggressively towards balancing general fund. think we got to start eliminating more items out of there. And maybe set a policy of, no more than X. But even that's a very, very slow process because we're talking 10-year notes, 20-year bonds. Even if we reduce this year and next year, it takes a while for it to really have an effect on the mill rate that we're under levying for.
Well, as of now, there's no more on the agenda except a closed session agenda, which talks about renewal of agreement between city and CWSF. That's all I know about it. Maybe our city administrator, Steve, can provide us more information as it comes about. I also see that there's possible litigation with Walmart in here. Again, this is all on the agenda, and you can always get the agenda and download that on our city website, ci.marshfield.wi.us, and that is up usually by Friday at noon. And there's a packet to go along with that as well. You can download that, get some ideas. Again, we will be broadcasting this meeting from here at the Common Council Chambers on Tuesday, September 8th, 6 p.m. You can always watch it right on our city website, again, ci.marshfield.wi.us. You can go on to Facebook, like our Facebook page. It's a city account, and we will be broadcasting that on that as well. And if you miss it, we also have it on our YouTube channel that you can tune in whenever you like after the meeting, and that will be uploaded as well. So I'm going to leave us with that, and why don't you tune in then on Tuesday, again, September 8th. Find out what the meeting's about. It looks like it's going to be a short one. But if you want to come to public comment, you're more than welcome to do that. Again, that is at the beginning of the meeting. It's item C, and the mayor will recognize you if you want to come here. If you don't want to attend in person, I believe you can send a letter, and that can be sent to Steve Barg, our city administrator. His number 486-2003, 486-2003, or steve.barg@ci.marshfield.wi.us by noon on Tuesday. If you're going to attend, it helps us with our social distancing because of COVID-19. And we would ask you to wear a mask during the meeting as well. Well, I'll leave you from that. I'm Tom Laux. I'm the Communication Director for the City of Marshfield. Thanks for joining me on our short council preview program.